Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's joint seminar on Afghanistan, the Way Forward. This event is put together by ISIS and the High Commission of Pakistan in Singapore. We're also pleased to have Her Excellency Ms. Rukhsana Afzal, High Commissioner of Pakistan to Singapore, joining us this afternoon. I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker, Ambassador Jalil Abbas Jilani, former Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, and Pakistan's former ambassador to Belgium and the United States, who will be delivering his address on Afghanistan, the Way Forward. Dr. Iqbal Singh Savia, Visiting Research Associate Professor at ISIS, will chair and moderate the seminar. Before we proceed with the event, we would appreciate if the audience could switch off their microphones and videos throughout the session. If you have any questions or feedback to share, please forward them via the Zoom chat. The questions will be consolidated for the panelists to answer. Please note that this session is live streamed on ISIS Facebook page. I shall now invite Dr. Iqbal to chair this session. Dr. Iqbal, please.
Thank you, Valtteri. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm encouraged to see the large number of people who've registered and are joining this discussion about the future of Afghanistan. This seminar, as my colleague just highlighted, is jointly organized by the Institute of South Asian Studies and the High Commission of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan in Singapore. And I'm grateful to Pakistan's High Commissioner, Rukhsana Afzal, and Ambassador Ong Keng Yong, Singapore's non-resident High Commissioner to Pakistan, for facilitating this seminar. The speed at which the Taliban consolidated their hold over Afghanistan in the days before the US withdrew its troops has caught many by surprise. And apparently it also caught the Taliban by surprise, the Taliban themselves by surprise as well. In the past few weeks, the Taliban have announced the formation of an interim government and made significant announcements. These include an announcement stating that they will not allow Afghanistan to be used as a base to launch terrorist attacks against other states. They've also signaled their desire to gain recognition from the international community. And they have announced their aim to cultivate economic relations, including that of joining CPEC, or the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And they've also announced that they will not replicate the draconian system of regulating the public sphere and social life, which they implemented 20 years ago when they were in power. The symbolic significance of such announcements notwithstanding, in the past few weeks, there have been more questions and speculation over the future of Afghanistan than clear indications of the political, social, economic, and geopolitical future of Afghanistan. On the political front, they have formed what is tellingly called an interim government, but we have no signal of the future political structure of the Islamic Emirate. We also have no indication about how long this interim government will be in place, what sort of structure will be put in place to appoint the new government. We also have questions about the inclusivity of the interim government. There are also other questions relating to the political sphere itself. Will the Taliban be able to actually develop a structure of governance and control and be able to implement this in the geographically, economically, and culturally vibrant and diverse regions of Afghanistan? Does the Taliban have the manpower to be able to govern Afghanistan? And will they opt to and be able to integrate administrators, policemen, and civil servants who are affiliated with the previous regime? On the economic front, as an insurgent movement, the Taliban has proved to be adept at drawing revenue from the legal and illegal logging industry, as well as the production of opium, as well as implementing a tax on the transportation of goods across Afghanistan, among others. But how will they go about developing an economic policy for Afghanistan? At a more immediate level, will they be able to pay the salaries of government workers? There's also the issue of foreign aid and access to foreign assets. Questions over Afghanistan's future social policies have drawn a fair amount of attention in the media. there are serious issues that need to be dealt with and engaged with about their future gender policies, and the role of women in society, the public sphere, and the state. Also, we need to grapple with what would be the interpretation, what would be their interpretation of Sharia, and what would this entail in the public space. Geopolitically, what sort of a role will states like China, Iran, Pakistan, India, Russia play in its future? Will Afghanistan once again emerge as a base for militancy? And perhaps more immediately, will the Taliban itself survive? Will the factions within the Taliban lead to fissures? We have seen how the interim government itself has been an exercise in balancing act of various factions. But there are also constant rumors of rifts, as we've seen in the media over the last 48 hours itself, about the apparent disappearance of Mullah Baradar. But the Taliban also has its opponents within Afghanistan itself. These include not just those who have been fighting the Taliban for some time, but the rise of new militant groups such as the ISIS Khorasan as well. As we ponder with these questions, it is worth noting that the Taliban is confronted in Afghanistan with a new demographic challenge in itself. More than 50% of the people of Afghanistan are under the age of 25. And this is also a demographic that is very integrated into the use of technology, but also one that is not as embedded in the traditional patron-client relations that have organized society in Afghanistan. As it is my pleasure today to welcome Ambassador Jilani, who will help us think through some of these questions and many more in the coming 20 minutes to half an hour, and then we'll follow up with a question and answer session. So Ambassador Jilani, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Iqbal Singh, for a very strong, very long introduction. I am extremely grateful to you, Dr. C. Raja Mohan, who is Director of ISAS, who has been an old friend from my Delhi days. And I'm also extremely grateful to Ambassador Ong Jong and Deputy Secretary Tech Hain for the support that they have extended to the hosting of this webinar. I am also extremely grateful to my very, very dear colleague, Ambassador Rukhsana Afzal, for having taken this initiative and inviting me to share my perspective on the evolving situation in Afghanistan. It is certainly an important issue for all of us, more so for Pakistan, because Pakistan is a country which is directly affected by the situation and developments in Afghanistan. You rightly pointed out, Mr. Iqbal, saying that stunning developments which took place in Afghanistan in August this year, they surprised everyone, including Afghan Taliban and including Pakistan, because all of us, we had totally different projections and assessments about the way the situation was moving forward in Afghanistan. You're also absolutely right that the speed with which Taliban overwhelmed the entire country, it defied all projections. The Afghan government, the US administration, senior military commanders, all major think tanks, and strategic analysts had claimed that Afghan security forces would be able to withstand Taliban advances. But that was not the case. The Afghan security forces, they surrendered without firing a shot, and the Afghan government collapsed like a house of cards. With this Taliban victory, and the collapse of Afghan government, in-depth analysis has already begun. Since all of us, who have remained engaged with Afghanistan, we don't like to accept blame. So accordingly, we indulge in blame game. So the blame game has already started. Blame game in the sense that Afghan government has blamed the US for giving legitimacy to Afghan Taliban by signing an agreement in February last year, or for that matter, by engaging them since 2012, 13, or maybe perhaps 14, ever since the Doha office of Taliban was established in Qatar. The US blaming Ashraf Ghani of corruption, mismanagement, and for his failure to forge an internal consensus in support of the peace process. Republicans in the US, they are also blaming the current administration for having ordered an abrupt withdrawal from Afghanistan. So, this is something which is going on. Some analysts are maintaining that the US NATO forces should have left Afghanistan much earlier. They were doomed to fail from day one because they lacked any knowledge of the history, social, religious ethos, and also the kind of traditions of Afghan society. They feel that billions of dollars which were spent in Afghanistan, they were a complete waste. And once the objective of defeating Al-Qaeda had been achieved, they should have left Afghanistan. Some other international analysts, they also, in my view, erroneously blame Pakistan for Taliban victory. They tend to forget that Taliban office had been established in Doha, Qatar in 2014. Their US Taliban Western negotiations with Taliban had started much earlier than that. And then the US signed an agreement with Afghan Taliban in February last year. And this is an aspect which was completely unknown to either Pakistan or even the Western allies of the United States of America. All these years, ever since these intra-Afghan dialogue or the US Afghan Taliban agreement took place, Pakistan had been extending its fullest support to any effort that would involve the success of the intra-Afghan dialogue, reduction of violence, for that matter, the success of the intra-Afghan dialogue. I think we also need to remember that in the last 20 years or so, Pakistan on several occasions the senior US leadership not to wage a full-fledged war in Afghanistan, and rather they should consider targeted action against Al-Qaeda, because that was perhaps the best possible thing to do at that particular stage, because the main enemy of all of us was Al-Qaeda, which had orchestrated these heinous attacks in New York on 9/11. At another level, I remember that we also suggested to the US administration at the highest level that they should engage with reconcilable Taliban, because that is the time when we received certain indications that Taliban leadership, they were willing to engage, they were willing to compromise, they were not very strong at that particular stage. And I think that perhaps, again, from our point of view, would have been a much better idea, because if that agreement had taken place or that development taken place in 2005, ever since Pakistan made this suggestion, things would have been slightly different. Now, as expected, post-mortem of the Afghan situation, it has already started. It will continue for a long time. But I think it is extremely imperative that our focus, the focus of the international community, should be on the future of Afghanistan and welfare of the people, which is threatened by ongoing uncertainty and economic hardship, which is being faced by the new government and the people. Perspective in Pakistan is that while the international community is adjusting to the new reality and adjusting its policies towards Afghanistan and making efforts may at some stage reconcile with a Taliban-led government in Afghanistan, there are certainly questions with regard to their ideology, the form of government, capacity, and their linkages with the extremist organizations, and the way they are going to treat women and other a common man, whether they would be subjected to harsh treatment by. So these are some real apprehensions which are being expressed by everybody, including Pakistan. But then I would say that despite positive signals emanating from the Afghan Taliban, many in the US and West, besides other members of the international community, they remain unsure if Taliban will prove to be a credible interlocutor, because there is definitely a trust deficit between Afghan Taliban and various interlocutors who are trying to engage with the Afghan Taliban, or if they have the capacity to govern. And this is something which you have very rightly pointed out. All these questions are being raised by everybody, and this is something which is also are being discussed and debated in Pakistan as well. And whether they will sever their links with various terrorists groups who were operating in Afghanistan, like Al-Qaeda, like ISIK, like ETIM, IMU, TTP, etc., and or LET, etc. So all these organizations are the ones about which there are genuine concerns, and everybody would like them to take some verifiable steps against these elements to eliminate them from Afghan soil, so that they do not pose a threat to any country for that matter. And then obviously there is a valid question with regard to the formation of an inclusive government, which we feel and the international community feels is also vital for peace and stability in Pakistan. But then if you look at the developments which have taken place in Afghanistan since August this year, there is a kind of some positive signals which have emanated from the Taliban side. For instance, they have announced that their immediate priority will be, number one, to seek international legitimacy and recognition. So this is something which is very important for the Afghan Taliban. Secondly, they have stated that they would like to retain public goodwill internally for carrying out social welfare activities. Thirdly, they have said that they would retain, they would sort of make their best efforts for economic revival and to seek international investments to explore unexploited mineral resources in Afghanistan. Formation of an inclusive government also remains one of the priorities for them. They've also announced that they would like to preserve Islamic character of Afghanistan and align their policies with international norms to the maximum possible within the confines of social, cultural, religious, and traditional values of the Afghan society. And then, of course, their main priority at this stage would remain the economic revival and economic well-being of people. We feel in Pakistan that it would be unrealistic to expect the Afghan Taliban to completely transform themselves overnight. They have been, in case the leadership, the main leadership, they have acquired a certain knowledge, they have acquired a certain sense the mood of the international community, and also if they have also been tired and fatigued, and they would like to have a peaceful Afghanistan. there is certainly a different orientation on the part of many of the lower cadres of the Afghan Taliban, and that is something that also be taken into account while sort of discussing this situation in Afghanistan. So this is something that we have to basically grapple with. They have, for instance, in the last 1 decade, since 2010-11, they have engaged with all major global players with interests in Afghanistan. They have, engaged with the United States of America very, very closely. They have engaged with the European countries. They had developed a very close interaction with China. Russia is also became a major interlocutor for Afghan Taliban in the last 8-10 years. Iran is again another country which developed very close relationship with Afghan Taliban. And then many of the Central Asian republics, they also developed connections with Afghan Taliban. Of course, we were engaged with them on a regular basis. And then they are also showing a lot of strategic maturity, and they have expressed their willingness to address the concerns of international community related to terrorism, inclusive government, human rights, etc. They have, interestingly, they have become media sub. If you look at the Afghanistan dispensation, the rule of the 90s, you hardly saw their pictures in the newspapers or their interaction on television. But these days, since the last couple of years, they are all over. They are in the media. They are Siraj Haqqani writing an article for New York Times, Siraj Haqqani writing an article for the Washington Post, being given space by these international media. They are there on television network, and then they have kind of overcome the shyness to a large extent. They have also co-opted major ethnic groups in Afghanistan. Since launching their operations, they took, interestingly, they first took control of the non-Pashtun areas. And then again, without any violence, without any fighting, the non-Pashtun areas, they also joined their ranks, in other words. And then they made the local leaders as in charge of the respective areas, the non-Pashtun areas I'm referring to. And interestingly, the commander who led the military operations in Panjshir Valley was also a Tajik. And then subsequently, the person who has been appointed as the governor of Panjshir province, he is also a Tajik. So that basically shows the kind of a new thinking on their part. They have declared protection of all minorities. In recent weeks, they provided protection to Muharram procession. This is something which was unimaginable. Muharram procession is a Shia procession, and in that Shia procession, they provided protection to the mourners, and which was again something which gave a signal of their co-opting all minorities in the new dispensation. They are perceived to follow the Deobandi sect of Islam, which is a hardline Sunni group. However, they have established extremely close cooperation and close relationship with Shia Iran. And they have announced general amnesty for all, including their foes and members of the previous government. They have announced that they would be very happy to induct the civil servants which were hired by the previous government, as well as members of the armed forces who were working with the previous government. And they have also indicated that women would be allowed to receive higher education. Obviously, it would be a segregated affair in Afghanistan, in the context of Afghanistan. But then, despite all these signals which have originated from Afghan Taliban, Taliban, in our view, would certainly face a hard time in securing de jure recognition. I have absolutely no doubt that they have been accorded de facto recognition for a very long time. They are seen as one group which has the potential to stabilize Afghanistan, and that's accordingly many of the countries they had started dealing with them for a very long time. But then the problem is that many of these countries who had accorded de facto recognition to Afghan Taliban, they had created an extremely negative narrative for their own public, for their own constituents. For the last almost 20 years, they were bad people. They were they violated women's rights, they violated human rights, and accordingly, they will not be able to form the government in Afghanistan. But now with this new reality, I think while they remain willing to engage with them, probably they will find a hard time in creating a positive narrative, and it will probably take some time before they are able to do that. But then, the latest developments that we have seen following this terrorist attack, we have seen that almost every country was engaged with them, whether they were European countries or Asian countries, and Taliban were also extending their fullest support during the attack that took place, or for that matter, for the evacuation of either the foreign forces, the civilians, or for that matter, the Afghans who wanted to leave Afghanistan. In our view, there is certainly a close linkage between a good governance, law and order situation, and the economic situation prevalent in any country, and Afghanistan is certainly not an exception. Afghanistan situation, economic situation, has deteriorated for the last several months, and more so after the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. The reason being that most of the financial commitment that was made in respect of Afghanistan, whether from the International Monetary Fund, which was to release $460 million, or for that matter, the assistance that was to come from the World Bank, that has been frozen. The Afghanistan money, which was deposited in U.S. Treasury, about $10 billion, that has also been frozen. And the amount pledged by the donor countries in Geneva last year, about $12 billion to be spread over a period of 4 years, that has also been suspended. Many other countries have also suspended assistance to Afghanistan. The new government doesn't have the funds to pay for the salaries, to provide basic needs of the people, and continuation. And this, continuation of this situation is certainly a recipe for disaster. It would lead to law and order situation. Already, food shortages are being felt in Afghanistan. There is short supply of medicines. Hospitals, many of the hospitals do not have even the necessary medicines which are urgently needed for the people of Afghanistan. In our view, in case this kind of a situation is allowed to continue for a long time, it would certainly lead to a civil war, and would also provide space to terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, ISIS to gain more strength. This situation certainly can be avoided by generous financial assistance and opening of channels of communication with the people. If, for instance, with the help of the international community, the situation moves towards stability, it would certainly create a win-win situation for the Afghans, Afghanistan's neighbors, and the international community. And recognition will also be essential to avert economic collapse. On the other hand, Taliban certainly will be required to, and I think this is something which should be made contingent on that they should demonstrate a practical demonstration to fulfill their commitments of, for an inclusive government, which I believe that they are trying to work very hard, and also, in eliminating these organizations that had established their base and who had also become a threat to the neighboring countries and the international community. So, and also they would need to improve the human rights situation as well as the situation of women in Afghanistan. In my view, there will always be spoilers and mischief makers who can be identified based on our past experience. But the positive indication that we have received in recent weeks is that there is a general consensus amongst the regional countries who are engaged with Afghanistan at the moment, that they would not allow these mischief makers to create any difficulties, or for that matter, they will not extend any support to elements who wish to perpetuate the civil war in Afghanistan. So these are some of the positive developments. And then I think it is equally important that Afghanistan's neutrality should be maintained at all costs. Afghanistan should not become a battleground for various for outside interests, I would say. A cooperative and coordinated approach is something that would help stabilize Afghanistan. That is something which is of paramount importance. I think if we talk about the way forward, I think the way forward is that rather than constantly talking about managing a humanitarian crisis, I think all of us, the international community, we should try and avert a situation which would lead to this humanitarian crisis. The average Afghan for the last 40 years, he has suffered enormously. And I think the common Afghan people, they deserve our support. And we must do everything that helps mitigate their problems. We must work out a mechanism of humanitarian and development support for a mechanism for Afghanistan, perhaps under UNAMA, which should also be strengthened in Afghanistan in view of the current situation, to ensure that Afghanistan becomes a stable Afghanistan and we are able to avert a breakdown of governance and security. Engagement and dispensation with the new Afghan government would be of paramount importance. I think this is important to prevent an economic collapse, ensure good governance, improved human rights situation, and avoid security vacuum. In case a security vacuum is created, that is our experience is that is always exploited by the extremist organizations. We must not repeat the mistakes of the 90s. Abandonment of Afghanistan will create mass exodus and a refugee crisis. We already have 3 million refugees in Pakistan. There are refugees in other countries. Many more are willing to go to the Western countries. So it would create, enormous difficulties for almost every country. I think the best possible strategy would be to ensure that situation in Afghanistan is improved so that people are not, they do not move to other countries. But luckily this time, contrary to the expectations that we all had, we thought that there is going to be another influx of refugees in Pakistan this time after the Taliban takeover, but certainly that has not taken place. Barring 5 to 10,000 people, which is very small, we haven't really received any more refugees this time. So I think that also reflects a degree of the hope that a new dispensation in Afghanistan has created for the people of Afghanistan. But at the same time, while we provide assistance to Afghanistan and the new dispensation, it is equally important that we continue to press upon Taliban that they must ensure that the commitments that they have made with the international community, they are followed in letter and spirit. And these obviously commitments include they need to protect the rights of women, Afghan men and women, and ensure that Afghanistan's soil is not used for terrorist activities in other countries. They have to take everybody, all ethnic groups on board. But then, in my view, the form and makeup of the Afghan government should be the decision of the new authorities in Pakistan. Pakistan has made its views on the above issues already clear to Afghan Taliban. One last point that I would like to make is that as far as leverage of the international community, I think the leverage at this stage of the international community in respect of Afghanistan is perhaps more than Pakistan's leverage. I think the international community, by offering financial assistance and legitimacy to Taliban government, will have far greater sway over the new government. And then we should all consider incentivizing the positive behavior by engaging them constructively. A coordinated approach is of paramount importance. I think we need to interact and coordinate very, very closely at this stage. And then through this coordination, we can not only ensure that Taliban also modify their behavior, but then they also, we can also make our support contingent on addressing international community's concerns. As far as we are concerned, we have vital stakes in peace and stability in Afghanistan. The 4 decades of war in Afghanistan has resulted in 3 million refugees, a destabilized border for Pakistan, terrorism, and also has caused huge loss to Pakistan's economy, which is estimated at more than $152 billion. Lastly, I would say that events since August this year should induce an introspection amongst all of us who are interested in peace, stability, and in Afghanistan, and the imperatives of formulating policies which are based on ground realities in Afghanistan. I thank you here, and I think we could now have an interactive question-answer session, and with which I think probably we will be able to bring in some more clarity on some of the points that my talk may have raised in the minds of some of the other people.
Thank you, Ambassador Jilani, for that stimulating talk. You've given us more to ponder about and much more to chew upon as well. There are questions coming in, and while I'll give the audience time to write their question, maybe I'll just throw one general broad question out, which I believe some others might want to ask as well later on in different forms. But to start the ball rolling, can we speak of the Taliban as one unified entity as we think about their future political, socio-economic moves? Is it fair to speak of them as one entity?
Again, this is an important question, which is there in the minds of many in Pakistan as well as the international community. But if we look at the developments of the last 20 years, this question was raised on many occasions. When a ceasefire was announced during the month of Ramadan, There were questions that some of the cadres, they did not like the ceasefire to be announced, but the leadership wanted wanted a ceasefire during the month of Ramadan, or for that matter, during the religious occasions. Similarly, on the question of Taliban engaging with the US and other international community, there were many cadres. Again, these are the kind of reports that we also saw, that they were very unhappy with the Taliban leadership engaging with the US, or the manner these negotiations were taking place. Or for that matter, these questions also arose, I remember, that when we were promoting, all of us, we were promoting intra-Afghan dialogue, there were many Taliban cadres who were raising questions with regard to the efficacy of this intra-Afghan dialogue, as for that matter, Ashraf Ghani also did exactly the same thing. But then all of them, they did engage with each other. They did engage with the US side. When the leadership dropped their demands, they had made 3 demands: the withdrawal of foreign forces, repeal of the constitution, because they said that we do not accept the constitution and the government which has been formed under the same constitution. But they dropped all their demands and engaged with all these actors. It did not break the Taliban cadres. They may have raised objections at some point of time, but they did not, we didn't detect any defections from their cadres during that. My sense is that they have emerged as perhaps the most well-organized political party in Afghanistan. The leadership that they have acquired, the Taliban, that is a very mature leadership. It's a very diplomatic savvy leadership. They have, I think, in terms of negotiation, they have also acquired great skills. And they have negotiated a very good agreement with the United States of America last year from their point of view. So I think with this kind of a situation, this talk of any division or any defection, my own sense is that is something that would perhaps not take place. At the end of the day, some people may raise objection to some of the steps that Taliban leadership may take, but at the end of the day, they would all concede and remain united, because that's the strength that they have demonstrated in the last 20 years.
Thank you. And I'm going to go into the questions that have come onto the chat. So let me start with what one of the questioners has said is a practical question. What can Pakistan do to support Afghanistan in improving its human development, especially at this critical juncture in its nation building? And the question
in terms of human development, I think it is certainly it is the responsibility of the Afghan government to basically move forward in that direction. What Pakistan can do is to extend a helping hand. And the same helping hand can also be extended by other countries. For instance, the new Taliban leadership would require skilled people to run their municipal administration, to sanitation department, their hospitals, their government, the police, their army. So it is going to be a gigantic task for the new government. And many of those people who were part of the previous government, they have fled the country. But the Afghan side, the new Afghanistan dispensation has asked them to come back and work there. They have announced general amnesty, but I don't think the lure of working in Europe or the United States of America would compel them to come back to Afghanistan. particularly at this stage when the situation still remains a little uncertain. We have already, or you talk about the human development, we extend 6,000 scholarships to Afghan students to study in Pakistan's technical institutions. That certainly will continue. There are many, we have produced a large number of doctors, engineers for Afghanistan who have studied in Pakistani institutions. So I think this is the kind of support that Pakistan can certainly extend to them. And in case their police or the army would require any training facility, we have certainly some of the best training institutions in our region, and we can certainly provide that kind of training also. Then I think they would also need economists to run the economy. I am not really sure about the capacity of the new dispensation in Afghanistan, but then again, that is an important area that, and I think probably they will have to offer incentives to their good economists, Afghan economists who are working outside Afghanistan to come back and help the new government in running the economy.
And that your answer provides a segue to two more questions. One I think you've addressed somewhat already, the issue of Pakistan's assistance in developing educational institutions and the whole educational project in Afghanistan. The other being the role that Pakistan could play in helping those who were internally displaced during the civil war, as the questioner has described it, and those who will flee the Taliban rule.
Well, as I mentioned that in case there were any elements who wanted to flee Afghanistan because of fear of Taliban, we already, as I mentioned, that we already have about 5,000 to 10,000 people who probably left Afghanistan because of this fear. And most of those people, in my view, are the affluent Afghans who left Afghanistan, and certainly we have witnessed a surge in property prices in Islamabad and in Peshawar and in other parts of the country bordering Afghanistan. So that is very much. But then frankly speaking, we have looked after these people very well in the past, which is something which has been acknowledged by all the previous governments in Afghanistan, and also it is acknowledged by the international community as well.
Thank you. There's another question which asks, what kind of, in your estimation, what kind of popular support does the Taliban have in Afghanistan itself? And would they be able to set up a government that would enjoy popular support in the future?
Well, I think, from our perspective, Taliban were able to take control of the whole of Afghanistan because of the popular support that they enjoyed. There was also a great disillusionment with the previous two governments, whether it was President Karzai's government or, for that matter, President Ashraf Ghani's government. So Taliban, as you are aware, they had taken control of almost 70% of Taliban, 70% of the Afghan area for a very long time. I think probably for the last, say, 7 to 8 years, despite the presence of US and NATO forces. And wherever they took control, particularly mainly in the rural areas, they, I think, managed those rural areas very well in terms of providing basic necessities to the people of those areas, providing health facilities, providing food, and also providing speedy justice. And that is something. And then their rule in the rural areas was also, free from any corruption. So these were some of the main strengths of the. In case, but then again, I would say that everything depends on the on the provision of basic amenities to the people. There are expectations from almost everybody in Afghanistan with the new dispensation. In case we extend a helping hand economically to them, then I think they would perhaps be able to govern in a much better fashion as compared to their rule in the 90s. So that's something which we have to keep in mind.
We have a number of questions relating to the potential official recognition of the Taliban government
Yes.
in Afghanistan. A number of people have asked the question in different forms, but essentially, what is Pakistan's position on this issue? Two, is there any indication of do you have any indication of the views of other South Asian countries on the issue of whether they would potentially recognize the Taliban government? And what about internationally? So I've condensed a number of questions in there.
Well, my own sense is, I know I'll first talk about Pakistan. I think for us, recognition at this point is not very important. We will take a decision along with the international community. So that's the decision that we have already taken within our own system. And this is something that we have also conveyed to the important members of the international community, whosoever is engaged and interested in Afghanistan. Secondly, I think what we have been able to gather is that everybody is engaged with them at this stage. Everybody is talking to them. And I think there is also a desire to help them somewhat, provided they are able to address their concerns. Russia has also indicated that Taliban are a reality and they need to be engaged. China has also indicated the same. German Chancellor also made a statement about 2 weeks ago that Germany also feels that Taliban are a reality and need to be engaged. But as I mentioned in my initial remarks, the problem is basically the respective constituencies, respective parliaments, and the media. Something that had been kind of a negative narrative. It would require some time before they're able to change it. We also, one point that I would like to mention is that all these countries that I am talking, whether the European, whether the US, whether it's the neighboring countries, Russia, they are engaged, most of them, they are engaged in a very discreet fashion. I think probably the time has come when they also need to come out in the public domain, those engagements. Perhaps that would also help understand the situation in a much better perspective.
Following up on that, do you foresee official recognition for the government?
Well, I'm talking about the official recognition. Sure. Official recognition will perhaps take some time. We also need to, and Pakistan is certainly aligned with the international community when it comes to the inclusive government, when it comes to the protection of human rights, and also when it comes to the actions against various extremist groups which have formed Afghanistan as their base. These are the kind of ongoing negotiations. But then one thing I must point out here, that as of now, we also need to coordinate very, very closely with us. We also need to help the people of Afghanistan by providing some financial assistance, simply by making these demands on the new dispensation and not helping economically or helping in their humanitarian issues would certainly not take us anywhere. I think there has to be a coordinated approach. Both the demands and the assistance should move simultaneously. And greater engagement between all the countries, the neighboring countries, as well as the United States of America and the European countries.
That leads nicely to another series of questions on the flow of financial aid into Afghanistan. Firstly, do you see that picking up in the coming days? what sort of concerns will hinder the flow of financial aid, but also can financial aid be actually used as a bargaining chip with the Taliban?
I think certainly it would incentivize the Taliban to take some more actions. It would certainly help build their capacity. It would also help satisfy their own cadres to a large extent, who are also governing various areas, districts, and also provinces. So this is something which would be extremely critical, this financial assistance, economic assistance, because unless you have, the basic facilities available to you, by co-opting everybody from within Afghanistan would be a difficult proposition for the Taliban themselves. So that is why I think, and in case assistance is provided to them, nobody is expecting that, number one, there would be any corruption, that they have been generally very, they have been honest with their dealings. One expects them to run the administration in a more efficient manner, in a corruption-free environment. But then again, these are the kind of things which will be tested when the Afghan Taliban are empowered. Without testing their abilities, all these, all this narrative would only be would fall in the realm of speculations.
And another question that deals with something you mentioned earlier about the support or lack of support for the Taliban in Afghanistan. This question asks, what are the prospects of Afghanistan ever getting a government that enjoys popular support?
Well, I have already responded to it, that in case they did not enjoy a popular support in Afghanistan, they would have not come back into power. I think they organized themselves very well. As I mentioned earlier, that the areas that they managed in the last 8 to 10 years, almost 60 to 70% of Afghanistan, they were very well managed by them. The people of Afghanistan, they had also showed a degree of confidence in their ability to govern. So popular government popularity is also directly linked to meeting people's expectations. People, they have welcomed them. There is absolutely no doubt. One indication is the absence of any refugees, either in Pakistan or in the neighboring countries. Those who have fled to other countries were also encouraged by some of those governments, because those people were working with the foreign governments and foreign forces. But otherwise, people, they have generally not left. But then how long would this popularity remain is a big question. And I think that is something which is directly linked to the provision of assistance and provision. My own thing is that in case assistance is provided to them, then they will be able to provide at least the basic facilities, amenities to their people. They would also consider, they would certainly help improve the human rights situation in Afghanistan. But then in case help is not forthcoming, it's a huge country. It's an underdeveloped country, and which has a lot of potentials. So they will not be able to. I think at the initial stages they need help, and subsequently when they start receiving investments in Afghanistan and the huge mineral resources that they have, perhaps they will be able to stand on their feet. And I have absolutely no doubt that one entity which, if helped, would help stabilize situation in Afghanistan, and would also be able to co-opt all ethnic groups which they have. Incidentally, when Taliban took over Afghanistan, the Taliban opposition members of Taliban opposition, members of the former Northern Alliance, they all were in Pakistan. 12 main leaders of the former Northern Alliance, they had come to Pakistan just 1 week, one day before the Taliban takeover. And I was told by someone the other day that many of them, they still remain in Pakistan. So that's something that also demonstrates that besides our channels of communications with Afghan Taliban for the last several years, we had also established channels of communications with the former Northern Alliance. I have strong reason to believe, because these people are also looking at the kind of reaction that will come from the international community. But in case the international reaction to the new dispensation in Afghanistan is positive, many of them, they would be willing to join Afghan setup. This is something that, and I have very strong reason to believe in this narrative.
Another question asked, the world has become bipolar once again, with the US and its allies and China, Russia, and their allies looking to strengthen their influence. How do you see this dynamic impacting the Taliban government, both the positives and the negatives of this?
Again, if you recall my initial remarks, I said that, we should not use Afghanistan for our own, narrow interests. The new strategies which are developed would also impact on the situation in Afghanistan. There is a very strong perception in our region that perhaps in case stability comes to Afghanistan, it would give a major advantage to China, because China remains popular with all ethnic groups in Afghanistan. It has engaged with them in the past. It continues to engage with all the ethnic groups, and they would all accept Chinese investments in Afghanistan. So that is again an issue which is extensively being debated in this region. So again, I think probably for a better future of Afghanistan, I think there has to be a dialogue between US and China, that Afghanistan will not fall in the category of countries where they're, with competing interests between the two power centers, and that they would ensure that Afghanistan remains stable. And as far as development of Afghanistan or investments in Afghanistan or exploiting mineral resources, that could also form part of a joint kind of a strategy to be pursued by not only the United States of America, China, Russia, and other countries. We certainly feel that in case Afghanistan gets stable, then many of the stuck-off projects which we would like to pursue, which Afghanistan would like to pursue, and the people of Afghanistan would also like to pursue, are number one, the extension of China-Pakistan economic corridor to Afghanistan. Secondly, the revival of CASA, and then revival of TAPI, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India gas pipeline project, which is also which is stuck because of the ongoing uncertainty in Afghanistan. So in case there is a stability, then I think, as I mentioned earlier, it would certainly create a win-win situation for everybody, for the US, for China, for Russia, for regional countries, and Afghanistan.
Moving from international geopolitics to South Asian geopolitics, there are a few questions that were asked, questions relating to India-Pakistan. And to summarize these questions, how do you foresee India-Pakistan relations being affected by the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan? And also, what sort of role, you've spoken about the role that you envisage Pakistan should play. What sort of role do you envisage India playing? And what sort of role should it play in Afghanistan?
No, I think we have been saying for a very long time that any country playing a role in Afghanistan should be within the confines of legitimacy. So any country pursuing a role in Afghanistan for development, for economic well-being of the people, that is something which would be welcomed by everybody. But in case the role is meant to destabilize other countries, again, that is something that would create enormous difficulties. As far as Pakistan-India relations and the situation in Afghanistan, I think, the overall perception in Pakistan would be that we will have, we had very serious apprehensions with regard to the support that was being extended to certain hostile groups in Afghanistan against Pakistan. Some of the support that was being extended to some of the elements from Balochistan like BLA, BRA, and also TTP in Afghanistan. So that is something that would certainly come down significantly. That is a positive for Pakistan. I was reading an editorial in the Hindu newspaper, with which my dear friend C. Raja Mohan is also closely associated. And the editorial also mentioned one sentence which was, I felt it quite intriguing when it said that it would also undermine India's ability to the exact word was to launch covert operations against Pakistan. So, that is the Hindu editorial that I would share it with Ambassador Roxana, which she can share it with you. So, that is the kind of apprehension that we had. I have dealt with this Pakistan-India issues for a very long time in my diplomatic career. And I was also closely associated with Pakistan-India peace process of 2003 to 2008. And I think it was a wonderful peace process. And it would, in case the process had succeeded, it would have created a new dynamic in Pakistan-India relations as well as in the region, and also at the global level. But then for any peace process, there are certain basic parameters that we had, and those parameters were very much in place in 2003 to 2001. The statesmanship and commitment of the leadership to the peace process at the highest level is of the paramount importance. I think Prime Minister Vajpayee did demonstrate a lot of statesmanship when in April of 2003, and mind you, that was the height of tension between Pakistan and India. We had India had moved troops against Pakistan border. It was probably the largest ever mobilization of Indian troops against Pakistani border from 2001 to 2002. And before that, many very unpleasant developments had taken place in our relations, Kargil attack on the Indian parliament, etc., etc. But then Prime Minister Vajpayee, he went to the Indian occupied Kashmir, and he stated that we would like to resolve, and he's on record as having stated, that we would like to resolve the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with insaniyat, which is humanity, and in accordance with Jamhuriyat, which is democratic principles. So that basically generated a feel-good factor. Statesmanship is very, very important. Secondly, I think support by the opposition parties is very important to any peace process. Thirdly, media plays a very important role, and core constituencies, they also play a very important role in any peace process. Core constituencies, in my view, are people who actually implement the policies or the vision of the leadership. And lastly, support by the international community is of critical importance to a peace process between India and Pakistan. Unfortunately, as of now, when we are discussing this issue, all these elements are missing from this, which I mentioned in the equation.
I have a series of questions here which relate to the issue of the potential rise of militancy and terrorism in the wake of the emergence of the Taliban as the preeminent political force in Afghanistan. So a number of our audience have asked, will the rise of the Taliban energize terrorist movements elsewhere? And does this have implications on global militancy? Some of our audience would like to hear your views about the potential impact of this in Pakistan itself, and others are interested in the potential impact in Southeast Asia as well.
You know, you mentioned about the rise of terrorism in the past in Afghanistan, and then which impacting on the regional countries, Southeast Asia as well. I think we also need to be a little realistic and rational. That is the time when Taliban had been completely isolated. Taliban, when they formed the government in the 90s, they were only recognized by 3 countries, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. And we were all 3 closest ally of the United States of America. So we gave recognition to Afghan Taliban for our own reasons, for our own compulsions at that particular time. But then, you know, there was a kind of a huge actions against them, campaign against them, which also, and I am not saying they must have formed alliances with some of these groups as well. Now the situation is entirely different. For the last, for instance, 10 years or so almost, they have been recognized as a kind of perhaps the most important entity in Afghanistan. They are engaged with by the international community. You name any country for that matter, which has interest in Afghanistan, and they are engaged with Afghan Taliban, not now, but for a very, very long time. I think this engagement is certainly very, very important. And I think that was also part of the commitment that they made with the United States of America, with other members of the international community, that they will certainly take action against those militant organizations. They would also sever their links with those organizations. That's number one. Secondly, I think the mushroom growth of various organizations that took place in our region and elsewhere, that was also the outcome of the geostrategic developments which were taking place in our region, in the Middle East and elsewhere. So there was also some kind of a support. Everybody was extending this kind of a support. There was, money that these organizations were getting from all over. But now I think the situation has changed. Those Middle Eastern countries who were also extending support to some of these extremist organizations in the past, they have also stopped extending this thing. So I think probably that is something which is also going to have a major impact on the activities of these terrorist activities in Afghanistan, as well as in Pakistan, other regional countries, and Southeast Asia for that matter. But then again, I would say that this is a phenomenon which would also require closer coordination and cooperation between all countries. So you have to develop a portal involving Afghanistan, regional countries and extra-regional countries for sharing of information. Incidentally, Pakistan hosted a conference of the regional intelligence chiefs last week, this week, I think 4 days ago. And the main purpose of this regional conference of intelligence chiefs was also to develop a mechanism of sharing information and with regard to the activities of these, and also taking joint actions. The new dispensation in Afghanistan does not have the capacity to take on these extremist organizations. they will continue to pose a threat to us, to you, to the Americans, to everybody. And I think joint efforts are needed on our part to at least develop the capacity of the new dispensation in Afghanistan so that they are able to take on these extremist groups, in one go or maybe one by one.
I'm just keeping an eye on the time as well. There's a question that's come up again to follow on something you mentioned earlier. And this is the idea that, that the Taliban now has changed from the Taliban that we saw 20 years ago. And a number of our listeners are interested in knowing if you believe that the sort of acceptance at one level of Shia presence in Afghanistan is a long-term commitment, or is this something that's going to fade away as we see the Taliban consolidating its hold further? And this relates to the lack of inclusivity of the government, the interim government.
You are talking about referring to the ethnic divide that is taking, that exists.
But the question specifically asked about Shias in
Shia. Okay. No, I think there is a sizable Shia community in Afghanistan, and they are everywhere, mostly closer to Iran-Afghanistan borders. Iran and Afghan Taliban, they have developed a lot of trust in the last several years. There is a very, very close coordination between Taliban leadership and the Iranian leadership. And I think the recent events when they approached the Shia leaders to join the new government, probably that was a very positive indication on their part. And then, as I mentioned, that they provided protection to the Shia processions, which also shows their high degree of tolerance for this Shia community in Afghanistan. I generally that this is something which was greatly welcomed in Pakistan. Because there are these forces who harm Shia interests everywhere, and then looking at the pictures of and the videos of Taliban commanders giving protection to the Shia procession was a very positive message that had gone out to many countries outside Afghanistan.
And related to that, the final question: should we fear a further clampdown on the rights of women in Afghanistan?
My own sense is that Afghanistan women certainly, already there is a positive change in the sense that previously Taliban in the 90s, they were averse to female education, but now they have openly declared that they would encourage female education at the school level, at the college level, at the university level. The only thing that they want is a segregated education for women, which is also the case in many of the Middle Eastern countries. So I think that by itself would be a positive. We don't expect the same rights to be given to the women as are available in Pakistan, other South Asian countries, or Singapore, or the European countries. But at the same time, I think with the developments taking place, in case more and more women they receive education. Education is kind of encouraged in Afghanistan. Probably the next generation that would come would perhaps be much more tolerant and much more moderate as compared to the current leadership I'm not current cadres of Afghanistan. I think we should keep those hopes high. But then again, the fear is that with the kind of narrative that is being built, the situation could perhaps lead to an economic disaster, which will have impact on almost everything that we all desire, whether it's the women of Afghanistan, whether it's the common man of Afghanistan, the unemployment, the people who are, less advantaged, they will all suffer in Afghanistan.
Ambassador Jilani, thank you for sharing your perspectives on this very important topic, and thank you for being so candid in your answers as well. I appreciate your time. As I bring this session to a close, I would like to once again thank Ambassador Jilani, but also thank once again Pakistan's High Commissioner Rukhsana Afzal and Ambassador Ong Keng Yong for facilitating this joint seminar. And on behalf of everybody listening in, I'd like to thank everybody again. And I'm going to just hand over to my colleague Puntavi, who's going to close the session.
Thank you, Dr. Iqbal. I'd like again to thank you, say my thanks. Thank you, Ambassador Jilani and Dr. Iqbal, for such an interesting and insightful seminar. Special thanks to High Commission of Pakistan for partnering with ISES in today's joint seminar. We would also like to thank Her Excellency Ms. Rukhsana Afzal, High Commissioner of Pakistan to Singapore, Ambassador Ong Keng Yong, Singapore's non-resident High Commissioner to Pakistan, and Mr. Neng Teng Hin, member of ISES Management Board, for joining us today. ISES is organizing another joint event with the High Commission of Pakistan, a panel discussion on Pakistan's digital transformation next Wednesday on September 22nd. Please look out for details about the panel discussion on ISES website and social media. We look forward to your participation in the upcoming event. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed this very illuminating interactive session, and I must say that the questions that came from the participants, they were all very relevant questions, and I enjoyed responding to those questions. Thank you so much, and looking forward to such interaction at some other stage as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.